G'day everyone, this is Jackson Millan, the Wealth Mentor, the co-founder and CEO of Aureus Financial.
Sam Panetta, the COO and the co-founder of Aureus Financial.
And welcome to the fourth episode of Ask Aureus Anything, the live Q&A where we answer your questions. Been a quick week, another one.
Yeah, I can't believe we're already up to the fourth one. A month into this.
Yeah, it's good. We're getting some good feedback, some fantastic questions. So we're going to dive right in.
I've had some not so fantastic questions. So my uncle Anthony Panetta, if you are watching, he took Ask Aureus Anything a little bit too literally, and he asked me if he's cooking pasta and he's got tomato sauce that he's making, how much basil should he put in the tomato sauce? I can't answer that. I've never cooked pasta in my life, so
I'm qualified to answer that question. Hashtag all the basil. All of it. Anthony, chuck it in. Put it in there, mate. Stir it around. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
On a more serious note, we've got our small business workshop in 2 weekends' time on Saturday the 17th of February from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at our Brookvale office. We're already at about 50% capacity, which is fantastic. We've got some really exciting agenda, and we're really looking forward to helping you guys kick some goals in the small business space in 2018 and beyond.
Yeah, if you guys want to come along, jump on the Aureus Financial Facebook page. I believe there's an event in there and a link. Go in there, grab your tickets. We've got a little bit over a dozen spots left.
Yeah, and there's also an event on the Wealth Mentor community too. Just make sure you fill in the RSVP, not just say you're coming on the event, because your seat will be taken.
Seats are limited.
Yep, cool.
Next week, so we have received a lot of feedback over the past month doing Ask Aureus Anything. Everyone's getting a lot of value out of it, but it's in the middle of the day and I think a lot of people are missing out. So we are going to drop it to 5:30 p.m. every Wednesday. That'll give people a chance to finish up at work. Maybe when they're on the bus, they can put their earphones in, they can listen, they can watch. I think we're going to get a lot more access to everyone and add a lot more value to everyone as well that way. Yep. So 5:30 every Wednesday from now on.
Cool. We'll see you there next week. But for this week, we have some really good questions that are already lined up. Of course, if you've got any that you want to fire off at us live, we will prioritize those. But before we get started, a bit of a general advice warning. Of course, any of the information that we discussed today is general in nature. If you do want to apply it to your personal situation, make sure you make some time with us first so we can discuss the intricacies of your situation before you dive in feet first.
All right, let's get into some of these questions.
Cool. All right.
This one's for you, mate.
Also, thank you very much to Nonna Panetta for brightening up our office with our special guest today, the office plant. We'll be asking questions and answering questions as well. But let's dive into the serious stuff. So this is a question I've been getting a lot, particularly from small business clients, and funnily enough, on very different trajectories in terms of their overall business journey. Some are just getting started, some are in established businesses. And the question is, how do I create a pricing model that allows me to charge for my expertise and not just exchange time for money? This is very important, and this is a very important observation. A lot of small business people undervalue themselves as an individual, and they don't charge appropriately for their level of expertise. And most people fall into this trap is mainly due to the fact that they haven't created two things. They haven't created an engagement process that allows them to qualify their prospects through the journey and, I guess, assess the value of that prospect in regards to the overall value proposition, and we'll touch on that a little bit later because there was another follow-up question. And secondly, they don't have a methodology in which they actually charge their clients based on the value that they deliver. A lot of business owners, particularly service businesses, only charge for that time. They sell packages of hours. They sell based on the level of time that they're putting into the job. A lot of people that are in kind of accounting and legal fields are really stuck in this kind of hourly rate. And although they're charging a pretty high dollar per hour, they're not pricing in the overall cost of their time when they're not with a client. So I believe in value-based pricing. and it's something that we've implemented in our business, and I've helped a lot of businesses do the same. And it allows you to have a frame in which you can charge what you're worth. You need to ensure that you don't become your own worst enemy, because if you leave it to chance and you're just kind of quoting off a whim, you're just kind of coming up with it as you go, or kind of doing a rough estimate, you will always undercut yourself and undercharge based on your value. So you need to create a framework in which allows you to say, okay, this client fits our business because of this. They're willing to take our advice. There's complexity for us to add value, and they're basically willing to pay a premium to get access to your solution. And by doing so, and obviously you can have a number of other parameters as well, this allows you to firstly assess whether you should do business with them in the first place. Far too often, business owners take anyone who walks through the door because they want the money, but more often than not, there's clients that don't fit the mold and are probably more trouble than they're worth. Further to that, by having this kind of robust pricing model that allows you to charge a premium based on your expertise and link it back to a return on investment or an ROI for your client or for your customer. And essentially, if ever challenged around what you charge, you're able to illustrate that to your client. So it's a very high level. If you want to dive into this in more detail, please let us know. I can take you through what we do with our clients and I guess the framework in which we coach our clients through this to create it for themselves. It's also going to be one of the topics that we're going to go through in the workshop.
Yeah, I think this plagues a lot of business owners, because as people go through the journey, they don't just become a business owner. Most of the time, they've started off as a technician in their field. They've gotten really good as technicians, and then they've moved on to become business owners. Correct. And it's very hard for them to lose that technician mindset and think more like a business owner. Yeah. I guess that's where you get caught in the amount of hours.
Yeah, the way I like to put it is that, let's say you need to get your wisdom teeth out. Where are you going to go? Are you going to go down to the local student dental hospital and let them do it for free or for $50 that cause you hours and hours of pain and anguish? Or are you going to go to a specialist that's probably going to charge you top dollar to get it done as quickly and pain-free as possible? And you need to apply that same frame to yourself as a professional in your business. If you hand on heart can say that you are an expert in what you do, or you have the ability to deliver a return on investment and achieve outcomes for your clients, you should be charging for it, because what you charge your clients for your level of expertise is highly correlated to the results that they will achieve. By undercharging, not only are you devaluing yourself as a human being and as a professional for all of your years of hard work, but you're also presupposing that your clients will achieve mediocre outcomes as a result.
Yeah, this topic can go on forever. Let's not do that in this Q&A.
Come to the workshop.
Yeah, come to the workshop. All right, so question number 2 for today. I own a property and have heard that you can use the equity in one property to buy another. How does this work, and can I do it? Yes, it's completely possible. If you have a property that has equity in it, you can essentially borrow against that equity to use it as a deposit for the next property. To get more into the nitty-gritty of it, let's say that you have a property worth $1 million. Typically, the banks will lend up to 80% value of the property, and they'll want to keep 20% for themselves. So if you have a property worth $1 million, you can probably borrow up to about $800,000 on that property. So let's say you owe $500,000 on that property, then you have usable equity of about $300,000. So assuming that you could service the additional debt, that your income versus your expenses was strong, you could go to the bank, borrow the $300,000 against that initial property, against the $1 million property, and then use that $300,000 as a deposit for another $1 million property and borrow, I guess, 70% against the next one. And you can rinse and repeat over and over again. And this is how people grow huge property portfolios. They start off with one, and then in 10 years' time, they turn that into 2. And in 10 years' time again, they turn it into 4. In 10 years' time again, they turn it into 8. Do that 4 times, you've got 16 properties before you retire. And that's how they continue to get the deposits to bankroll one after the next.
But that is becoming more difficult, isn't it, mate?
It is, mate. Lending in general is becoming more difficult from everywhere you look at it. For the borrowing capacities, from taking cash out of your investment properties, it's all getting more and more difficult. I think we just have to adjust. I think investors just need to adjust, learn the new way of doing things, and work out how to continue to get ahead that way.
Yeah, I think particularly for business owners, it's been a strategy where a lot of business owners have been able to minimise their tax by showing less income, but still had the ability to borrow aggressively, especially if they already had properties, particularly investment properties. But now the serviceability rules are becoming tougher. So it essentially means that you need to show more income for every dollar that you borrow from the bank. So I would say that if you are looking to build your wealth using property and using leverage, you need to have a serious plan in place for what financials need to look like in your business to allow you to execute the strategy. What we see far too often is that a lot of business owners see their accountant after the tax year is concluded, therefore the damage is already done, and they then go and say, okay, fantastic, I've saved up this deposit, or I've got equity in my properties, I'm going to go buy another one, and unfortunately they don't have enough income to substantiate the additional borrowing. So then they've got to wait another financial year in order to go buy that property, and who knows what's going to happen with the property market in the meantime. So get ahead of your tax strategy and business strategy before the end of the financial year so you can adjust things according to what you need to achieve the outcomes that you want.
Yeah, I think a lot of our older clients in years gone by, if you just had equity in a property, the bank would lend you the money. They weren't too concerned with servicing. You'd be able to find a bank that would give you the money. They're protected. They've got equity in the property. If you go belly up, they're just going to take whatever properties you want. These days, the banks don't operate like that. They're very strict. Not only do you need equity, but you need the servicing as well. So you need the income to justify borrowing the extra money. It's not enough these days just to have, a couple of houses with no debt on it, or to have the biggest income in the world. You need both. And that's when the banks will lend you some cash.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Next question. I keep hearing about this customer avatar thing, but what does it really mean? And this kind of does link in very closely with your pricing model. This is all about and all links into the idea of having a unique value proposition in your business. And by saying a unique value proposition, it's about having some sort of a niche or a specialization in which allows you to be a specialist, not a generalist. This is typically more so for service businesses, but it is also important for product-based businesses who, I guess, potentially have a little bit less control of who walks in the door, but will allow them to be able to create promotions and offers to support their ideal customers. So what is an avatar? An avatar is the process of profiling the ideal customer or customers that you want to work with in your business. And the idea of the exercise is about being able to define that individual or individuals with as much clarity as you possibly can to understand who they are, what they do, what do they like and dislike, what are their kind of pains and gains, what are they looking for. And there's a series of questions and exercises that you can go through here to get really, really clear on who those people are. And you can have as many customer profiles or avatars as you want, but it's about speaking to one at a time. So for example, if you've got an avatar in your business, let's say you've got a legal business and you specialize in small to medium enterprises who are in their growth phase and are turning over more than 1.5 million and have more than 10 staff, then you need to have a very particular message to that individual, and you're probably not going to be marketing to them about how to set up a company because it's probably already established. You would be talking to them about the risks associated with going through your growth phase and potentially being sued or having other things go wrong, whether it be with your employees or other things like that. So when you're clear on your avatar, it allows you to go from this kind of scattergun approach of your marketing and basically content to being able to get really, really specific on who you speak to and how you attract those types of people. It's not to say that you can't work with other profiles. And this is a question that I had a conversation I had with a couple of clients the other day who've been in business for a long time. All it means is that if a customer does walk through the door that isn't ideal, you have the ability to say, look, this is who we specialize in working with, and I'm more than happy to help you, but it's typically not what we do. And it basically allows you to hold that frame of abundance to either say, okay, I'm going to make an exception to the rule because I want to work with you as a customer, and I think that we can do good business, or have a relationship with another non-competing strategic partner who does specialize in that space that you can refer them onto, who is probably better suited to catering to their needs and is going to cause you less headaches in the process so you can hunt more ideal clients.
Yeah, and I think a common misconception with client avatars is that we're saying, really aim in on these clients and, really pinpoint them, right? And have this one very unique person. This is who I'm targeting. And then people go, yeah, but what about everyone else? You don't have to have one client avatar, but you need to understand if you've got 5 client avatars or 3 or 10 or whatever it may be, you need to understand which parts of your business apply to which avatar, how you market to these different sorts of avatars. And it's a lot, quite a bit of work, but it's part of the business plan. You have to do it. You have to understand who your clients are.
And it's a good point, mate, that you ideally can have a solution for all of these people, or these different types of avatars that you ideally want to work with, but you need to understand what are they going to get the most value out of and what is best use of your time. So, for example, the book that I've recently released is for everyone. We've marketed it at 99 cents. Anyone can afford that, but anyone can also get value out of it and apply it to their situation, irrespective of whether they're just getting started and are in that kind of financial battle stage, or whether they're at complete financial abundance, because there's obviously a component there around legacy and giving back. So that's a very broad approach that can work for everyone. But it also doesn't, once I've written it, it doesn't require any more of my time. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we've got our kind of holistic wealth hub clients who are growth phase businesses, really time poor, have substantial amount of means, but don't have the time to be able to invest and do things for themselves. We help them map the plan and understand what they want, but we do all the heavy lifting for them as part of our overall team. So we've been able to create offerings at both ends of the spectrum for a different client avatar. And it just wouldn't work if we were trying to market this full wealth hub solution to every single person in the market. It just wouldn't work because it doesn't appeal to everyone.
It doesn't fit everyone.
No.
It doesn't fit. And we'll go into this in the small business workshop in even more detail.
Yeah.
All right. This one looks like it's for me. You mentioned that you mention a lot that people should get advice before buying an investment property. Where do I get this advice from? All right, so there's this sort of niche industry in Australia that it's growing, but it's not big like it is in, say the United States of buyer's agents or property investment advisors. And what essentially they do, or good ones, they'll help you strategically map out a plan for you to use property investment as a vehicle to achieve your overall wealth goals. And from there, once they've done that, they'll be doing the research, they'll go out, they'll find the properties, they'll do the negotiating, they'll run all the tests that you need, all of that. And it essentially takes all the heavy lifting away from the person who's the investor, the one buying the property. And this offers, I guess, two really strong points to it. Number one is it stops people from making really bad mistakes. And number two, it helps people get into a really good property. And if you're buying, over the years, you buy, half a dozen mediocre properties, or you buy half a dozen really high performing properties, your net worth at the end is going to be substantially affected, and how quickly you can grow is going to be substantially affected as well. So whilst some people would say that buyer's agents or property investment advisors, that the fees are prohibitive, I will never buy another property again without having a property investment advisor help me do it. It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer for the amount of value that they add. And it's not like you're buying $5,000 worth of shares or $10,000 worth of shares. You're making a $500,000, $1 million investment. You have to get it right. You can't get it wrong.
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting space, and we've spoken about this before, and I'm very passionate about this. Because there's a lot of cowboys in the property industry, and it happens at the peak of every market cycle. You see these spruikers come out of the woodworks and try and sell crap to the average punter who doesn't know any better. And lots of people get burned. Either they get a mediocre property that underperforms the market on average, or they really do their ass by getting a really crap property in an area that isn't supported by the fundamentals that influence future growth. And it's one of these things that the property market and the amount of information that is available isn't, it's hard to get the right answers to make an informed and educated decision. And even further to that, there's more and more information that we have access to, which is, I guess, clouding our decision-making process. For example, on realestate.com.au and Domain, they've now got property research tools that give you the historical data, but that's only one piece of the puzzle. It doesn't give you information around the demographics. You don't understand vacancy rates, all of these other things that contribute towards how do you select a well-rounded investment that's geared for future performance. And a really good property advisor can do that. Conversely, it's sometimes very, very hard to filter through the crap. To set an expectation, and I've said this before, I probably get maybe 2 to 3 LinkedIn messages a week from these spruikers who are positioning themselves as property advisors and buyer's agents who are just selling off-the-plan rubbish, who are basically receiving a commission from a developer.
Substantial commission.
Substantial, sometimes $50,000 for just selling one investment property. So you need to be really, really careful and make sure you get objective advice. We've done a lot of due diligence in this space, and we've basically built a panel of property advisors that we're confident in recommending our clients to. And essentially, we actually did a podcast with one, which is going to go live in a couple of weeks, a guy by the name of Will Hoskins from PMC Property Group, who are based in the northern beaches of Sydney, but they specialise in the research-based approach of selecting assets for their clients. So tune into that in a couple of weeks' time. But if you are on the hunt for property, you do want to get referred to a trusted advisor in the property space, just let us know. We can put you in touch with them.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right. So I'm really busy in my business, and I can't find the best way to keep on top of my action items and projects that I want to complete in my business. How do I best keep track of this? Look, this is an interesting one. I find that most business owners spend most of their day in their inbox, and a lot of the kind of projects that they're trying to work on are run from Outlook or from their calendar, which is just a terrible way to manage your time. I do this in a couple of ways. So personally, for Sam and I, when any projects that we're working on the business, so just to separate, working in the business and working on the business are two completely different things. Mm-hmm. So as such, Sam and I have decided that we use two completely separate platforms to manage each of those respective projects. So working on the business, we use a tool called Asana. And Asana is a free tool that allows you to basically run projects and collaborate with your team or with stakeholders. It basically allows you to set up a project, break down into action items, mark due dates, put project managers, and basically collaborate on projects and keep basically your conversations consolidated under a particular subject to ensure that you don't lose track of anything. The reason why I like this is because it gives you a sense of structure and accountability. An analogy that I like to use a lot is that if you're spending all of your time trying to think about how you're going to do things, that is less time and energy that you have available to actually execute on what you're trying to do in the first place. An example of this is that when Barack Obama was president, he only wore blue suits, navy suits. He never wore anything different. And when they asked him why, he basically said, look, I've only got the ability to make around 4 significant strategic decisions a day. So if I have to wake up in the morning and think about what I'm going to wear that day, that's already one potential strategic decision burned. So minimize the amount of wastage that you have about thinking about just the basics. Get a structure in place that allows you to support your ability to make the best decisions working on your business and get shit done. So for us, Asana works best. There are plenty of other project management dashboards and tools that you can use out there. If you want to find another one that works well for you, perfect. As long as you have something that's outside of your day-to-day, that is only used for that specific purpose.
Yeah, and I think this runs a little bit deeper, and I think having the right tools in place it's a must-have, but also as a business owner, knowing what tasks you're doing that are in the business and what tasks you're doing that are on the business is really important as well. Because if you spend too much time in the business, essentially all you're going to do is continue working. So you've essentially bought yourself a job, you know what I mean? You've built yourself a job. On the flip side, you need to always push the pace and work on the business to grow the business, but not so much that the business itself falls behind. So it's a very fine balancing act. And I think 99% of business owners have trouble with this. They don't know when they're working in the business. They don't know when they're working on the business. And for that, they're just spinning the treadmill. They're not getting ahead.
I'm a big believer that you make best use of the time that you have available. Like, think about it. When was the last time that you weren't busy? And I'd probably say that you'd struggle to think when. Like, even when you're getting started in a business, there's always so much to do. You always fill your time. So you need to block out time that allows you to work on your business. We do this basically every morning. We work on kind of sales and marketing, which is our main focus at the moment, and obviously producing content. And our Fridays are going to be basically strategy days where we work on the business solely. And we ultimately want to get to a point where we don't have to do any client work on a Friday, so we can dedicate that time just to working on the business. I advocate making sure that you block out time in your diary to do the same. And unless you hold yourself accountable to making the time, you're just never going to have the time. You're never going to find it.
All right. Excellent. All right, here's another one. So I'm a small business owner and I've been told that I can't borrow as much as I want to buy my next property. What can I do to borrow more money? This is a very good question. It's a very common question. It ties into what we were talking about earlier about equity releases and things like that. With business owners, as Jackson did mention, a lot of business owners have been taught to minimise the amount of tax they pay. So they minimise the amount of profit that they show in their business, which essentially means when they go to the bank and they want to borrow money, they show all their financials to the bank, and the bank go, well, you don't really earn much, you don't earn anything. And that's not true. These businesses are earning money, but they're just pushing it around so it doesn't look like they're earning any money. And it's detrimental, because you're better off earning really good money, paying the tax on it, and then going and saving some cash up and buying investment properties. Do that over a 10-year period, and you're going to be much better off than if you just saved a little bit of tax along the way. What can you do to improve it? Go hard in your business. Try bringing in as much revenue as you can. Try keep your costs down. Get a good profit margin in there. Pay yourself a good salary. If you're married and your wife or your husband's in the business, make sure they get paid a salary for their work as well. There's no easy bullet there. You push the business to perform as best as it can. The better the business performs, the more the banks are going to lend you.
This is a problem that's synonymous with not having a destination in mind 12 months ago. You've basically worked hard in your business, and you've got to a point where you've achieved a result, and you're now trying to then achieve the destination or the outcome without knowing 12 months ago what path you needed to take to get there. And this is very typical in a lot of small business. And this is also exacerbated by typically a traditional accounting relationship, where your accountant gets you in after tax time when you're basically near the deadline of submitting your tax returns. The damage has already been done. They're just basically punching all the numbers into basically a document and then submitting it off on your behalf with basically no advisory. They're treating it as if it's a transaction. This is the wrong way to do things, and I'm going to be very blunt. The new way to do things is that you have an accounting relationship where your accountant isn't just somebody that does the bare essentials. You have somebody who essentially engages you on a monthly basis in a monthly fee, and it does not mean that they have to be in your business every month, but they're overseeing what's going on. They help you create a plan in your business in order to achieve the destination that you want, and they're able to lay down the roadmap to allow you to, I guess, have some level of accountability to a plan. At the end of the day, a lot of traditional accountants justify their fees based on the amount of tax they can save you. And it's easy to save someone's tax. You don't have them earn any money. If you're earning money, you're paying tax. You should be in a position in your business where you get a tax bill from the ATO. You should be thankful. You should be appreciative. You should get excited, because that means that you're making money. And a lot of exercises that I've done with my clients is about getting them in a position where they're saving for their tax in advance. They're ahead of the 8 ball, they're creating healthy surplus, and they have a plan in order to continue to build their wealth outside of their business, because I guess not all of us have the ability to have a value in our business. A lot of businesses are just a cash flow business. So if you're in a cash flow business that has no real intrinsic value, then you are basically, as Sam said, creating a job for yourself. So your new purpose is to make as much cash flow as you possibly can to build as much wealth outside of your business to be able to live the life that you desire. That is the number one objective. So you just need to work out how you can drive your business forwards, show that profit, and scale your wealth.
And this is a new way of looking at this. So I know a lot of people are going to be watching this and going to be saying, but that's not what I was taught, you know. A lot of what you were taught was probably not very good education anyway.
Yeah.
But let's tie this all together, right? Let's tie this all together. So Jackson and I, right now, our families, we have our own personal wealth strategies, what we want to achieve in our personal lives over, let's say, the next 12 months or the next 24 months, okay? From there, the business, Aureus Financial, has its own strategy, its own business strategy for the next 3 months, for the next 12 months, 5 years, all of that, but it's a little bit shorter in a business, okay? From there, we understand how much the business has to make for us to achieve our personal goals. So what we do every month, I go and meet our accountants in the city, and we do a cash flow review over the past month, okay? And we test that against the budget forecast that we done 3 months ago. And every 3 months we do a new budget forecast, so we know what we can expect or what we need to achieve in turn for the business to achieve, in turn for us to achieve our goals. And we're spending a lot of time on this because we do the budget forecasts every 3 months, and then every month we go back in and we check it to see, have we hit our forecasts, have we not hit our forecasts, what are all the numbers saying, you know, how much revenue is being produced, what are our expenses, what's the bottom line at the end of the day. And that is what it takes for a business to achieve its goals. It takes proactive work, not reactive work. At the end of the year, you get a shoebox full of invoices, you throw it at your accountant and you run down the street. It's not how it works.
No, and this doesn't need to be that hard. It starts with do a budget for yourself and understand what is your ideal lifestyle cost and what do you need to make in order to give yourself a healthy surplus. We typically say at least 20% of your net income to be able to build your own personal wealth. Then reverse engineer that. In order for you to pay yourself that, how much profit does your business have to have? And then therefore, based on the relationship of your profit, your revenue to your costs, how much revenue do you have to drive? And what do your costs need to look like in order to create that level of profit? So then you keep reverse engineering that back until you get to a point where you know what your revenue needs to be on a weekly basis, on a fortnightly basis, monthly basis. And that is your KPI, your key metric that you watch and keep an eye on, because that will ultimately be the lead indicator that results in the lag outcome of you getting that level of income to be able to substantiate your wealth and build wealth.
And we've said it before, you know, business owners need to take this stuff a little bit more seriously. When you're an employee, you're PAYG, you know, you go to work, you get paid at the end of the month, and you just need to concentrate solely on your own personal wealth strategy. When you're a business owner, you need to focus on your personal wealth strategy and your business strategy as well. So an additional layer.
Yep, cool. All right, so probably after that last statement, this question is even more true. I want to start a business and I'm feeling very overwhelmed. Any advice? This is a good one. Once Sam hit the nail on the head. When we're an employee, we may be the best at what we do. We believe that we're the number one in the country or in our industry or whatever it may be, even within the business that you're working in. And you obviously believe at that point that you can do it better. You've got an idea that you can basically put into effect and address a gap in the market. But what a lot of startups overlook is all of the other responsibilities and other areas that become their responsibilities when they start a business, choosing the right structure to set up their business, their tax obligations. How do you choose an accountant? How do you do bookkeeping? How do you choose software? How do you set up your banking? What legal agreements do I need? Negotiating leases, DA applications, fit outs, all of these things. And we go from this point of being unconsciously incompetent, where we just never even thought about these things before, to very quickly becoming consciously incompetent, where we're like, shit, there's a whole lot of stuff that we have absolutely no idea. This happened to me in my first business. And I come to realize very, very quickly that I was out of my depth. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is the same. So all I can say to you is that you need to immerse yourself in education, and you need to go from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent as quickly as possible, and then from consciously incompetent to consciously competent as quickly as you possibly can as well. And then only through time will you get to a point where you master all of those new skills, and then you become unconsciously competent, where you kind of do things without thinking. For example, use the analogy of when you started learning how to drive, particularly if you started learning to drive a manual. Think about when you first got into the car and you go, oh shit, what do I do? You're so out of your depth, and you're trying to think of, okay, keeping the car on the road, observing around you, pushing in the clutch, shifting the gears, listening to, in my case, my dad screaming at me for doing the wrong thing, nearly crashing the car. So you go from that unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent very quickly. But then once you start getting the hang of it, you've still got to actively think about keeping control of the car and doing everything, which is now consciously competent. But after a while, you can jump in your car, your mind starts wandering, and before you know it, you're already at your destination. You don't even know how you got there. Because you're that good at, hopefully, you're that good at mastering the skill of driving. Same thing in business. You need to immerse yourself in education, understand all of the pillars of your business that you're going into, that you need to learn and know before you outsource them. If you're going into business saying, oh, I don't need to know marketing, I'm just going to pay someone to do that, you will fail, 100%. You need to understand at least the basics of every single part of your business. So then when you do eventually outsource it, that you can hold those people that you've outsourced to accountable so they don't have a leg again.
Yeah, and you will. Like, if you're in a growth business, there's going to come a point where you're delegating as much as possible to everybody in the world. But you still need to understand what's going on in the business and all different factors of it as well. All right. So this is something that we bang on about this all the time, right? So why is a budget so important? I can remember what I am spending in my head. No, you can't. You can't remember what you're spending in your head. I want anyone who's listening to this right now to think about everything they've spent in the last week, all right? Just a total figure. I can't remember. Can you remember what you spent in the last week? Neither can anyone else. And then even from there, okay, itemize what you spent. What did you spend the money on? No idea. And this is why you need a budget. You need to work out how much is coming into the house. You need to work out how much is going out. And from there, you start from there. You know how many people that have, that we've worked with, and they've said to us, we can't get ahead. No matter how hard we work, we can't get ahead. We do a budget, and it turns out that they're in a negative surplus. So essentially, over the course of a year, they're spending more money than they earn, and they're wondering why they're not getting ahead. Well, because you're working really hard, but you're spending every dollar that you're earning, and you're probably spending a little bit more on credit cards and personal loans and car loans and things like that. So if you don't understand your numbers, and this is the very core basic of creating wealth, then you're always going to be stuck.
Yeah, you need to know where you are to know where you're going. And this is really the first point of you assessing the state of your current situation, and then identifying the areas in which you can kind of push forward and achieve your goals. We've kind of addressed this, that budgeting is a dirty word. People hate it, but it doesn't need to be that way. We want to challenge the negative connotations associated with budgeting, because my view on all of this is that you shouldn't use a budgeting as an exercise in order to take all the joy out of your life. You shouldn't eat cornflakes for dinner for the rest of your life just to have a bigger surplus. This is about understanding what your ideal lifestyle costs, asking yourself whether you have enough means to support that, and whether you are happy or content with the level of surplus that you have left after the fact of that lifestyle. And if not, what are you going to do to change it? Are you willing to sacrifice your lifestyle, or are you going to go out and drive more income into your budget to allow you to have that, on average, about that 20% of your net income as surplus on a monthly basis, and take that off the table and pay yourself first and save that irrespective of whatever comes up. We always live to the means we have available. So unless you set yourself up with a structure that supports your ability to save and have good spending behaviours, you will always overspend. So doing your budget in your head is just not an option. You need to leverage technology, leverage an account structure that will help you maintain your spending and reduce the risks of you doing damage.
Yeah, and as I said, we've mentioned this before. We're going to mention it again because it's that important.
It is. All right, this is a good one. So a client of mine had a question. The local economy is having a big impact on my business. What can I do when driving growth isn't really an option right now? Look, this is a really good question that I think that a lot of us always think that when we go into business, times are always going to be great. There's always going to be an abundance of customers. Whatever happens, we can always go out and drive more revenue and essentially continue to grow and scale our business. But I think we take that for granted a little bit, given that for most of us, particularly in, let's say, Sydney, Melbourne, and for I guess another example, Brisbane too, we have very diverse economies, and the likelihood of a big macro downturn has been, I guess, pretty rare. So as such, we take it for granted that the economy may not always be the way it is right now, and times can be tough. So when it comes to what you do, this is economics 101. Where you cannot turn a profit in your business, you need to minimize the losses. And how you minimize the losses is about understanding your cost base, so your fixed and variable expenses in your business, and itemize them into non-negotiable and negotiable costs, very similar to a personal budget. And the idea is about understanding what value all of those costs have to your bottom line, to the revenue that you can drive in your business. And where there are things that are more so a nice to have, that don't really add any value to your ability to drive revenue, you need to cut them from your business immediately. You need to hemorrhage the blood loss. And you essentially need to batten down the hatches and divert your cash flow into areas that is going to optimize the opportunity that exists in your current market. Now, this may not guarantee that you're going to be profitable. This may just allow you to break even and scrape through, which is really the worst case scenario. You need to, as a worst case, ensure that you're not going backwards every single year. It's about potentially downsizing your team, get rid of, unfortunately, as harsh as it is, potentially getting rid of a little bit of dead weight that would be nice to have those people there, but unfortunately aren't really converting dollars to the bank account. You need to potentially review the contracts and relationships that you have with external consultants, negotiate those fees, try and get better terms on your creditors. All of these things will allow you to maximize your cost base and give you the best opportunity to essentially drive sales. Further to that, you should be amplifying, where possible, the amount of money that you spend on your sales and marketing, and really getting clear on your pricing model, your value proposition, and your customer avatar. Because I guarantee that there are people in the market that do have money to buy, even in a bad economy. In a bad economy doesn't mean everyone is doing bad. It means that for a lot of people, things are tough, not for everyone. So you need to find out a way to get those people who aren't doing it tough to buy more, and those people that are doing it tough to potentially come to you to buy the things that they need, not necessarily the things that they want. So that's a few kind of quick tips to get you on the right track. Once again, this comes back to budgeting as well. If you don't have cash flow management strategies in your business to understand your cost base and how you're potentially hemorrhaging money, you're going to float off track and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, great advice. Very good.
For you guys watching, you got any questions? Just flick them out there for me, Sam, the plan. Just ask away.
The plan's quiet, but he's smart.
He's smart. He's listening. He's pondering. He's a thinker.
All right, so this one's right up my alley. There are so many options to consider when getting a home loan. Can you please explain the differences? All right, yes, I can. So there's essentially three different levers with a home loan. Is the home loan owner-occupied property? So is it your home or is it an investment? The second lever is, are you going to make interest-only repayments or are you going to make principal and interest repayments? And the third lever, are you going to have a variable rate home loan or a fixed rate home loan? Now, it gets confusing. It's gotten confusing over the past 12 or 18 months or so, because banks have really started shifting the pricing for all these different things. All these different variables A couple of years ago, were all priced very, very similarly, if not the same for most banks. That's changed, where there's huge differences in interest rates depending on which banks and which ways you structure it. We're talking big differences, sometimes even more than 1%. All right. So when you're thinking about taking out a home loan, whether you're deciding if it's going to be for an investment property, so an investment property home loan, or a home loan for your owner-occupied home, that's not really a negotiable, okay? That you're going to go in one basket or the other. If you're buying your home, you're going to get a home loan. If you're going to buy an investment, you're going to get the investment. I guess the differences with those is your home loan is very, very likely going to be more competitive than what an investment property loan would be. However, the investment property loan is probably going to be tax deductible, where the loan on your home isn't going to be. So they're the sort of main differences there. With the principal and interest only comparison, principal and interest repayments typically attract a much more competitive interest rate. However, the repayment itself every month is going to be higher because you're paying off interest plus principal. On the flip side, interest-only repayments, the interest rate is typically going to be higher, more expensive. However, because you're only paying interest back and no principal, then your repayment, your commitment to the bank every month is going to be lower. The third lever that you can pull, the fixed versus variable. With a variable interest rate, it can go up or down depending on market movements. With a fixed rate, you can typically lock it in for anywhere between 1 and 5 years, and it won't change during that period. When you have a variable rate home loan, it's typically more flexible, so you'll get things like extra repayments, redraw facility, offset accounts, and all that sort of jazz. And when you have a fixed rate loan, you might get a little bit of extra repayments. Some banks will give you an offset, but not many. And essentially, if you pay that loan off, so let's say you refinance or you actually pay the home off or you sell the home, then you're probably going to pay a break cost when you get out of a fixed rate. I know that's a lot to ingest. I'm not done yet. So typically when someone has a fixed rate versus a variable rate, if you have a good surplus in your budget and you think you're going to contribute more, you'd probably go a variable rate. If your surplus is pretty tight and you want a bit of certainty, you'd probably lock in a fixed rate with principal and interest or interest only to help you decide. If you have a good surplus or the property is your home, you'd probably consider a principal and interest debt. With interest only lending, if you shouldn't really go interest only if you've got a small surplus in your budget. It's the wrong reason to pick interest only. You probably shouldn't be taking on that amount of debt if you can't afford the principal and interest repayments. Typically, people will take out interest only when they have a homeowner debt that they want to pay off first because it's not tax deductible, or they hold a significant amount of cash that they can keep in offset so they don't have to make the repayments on, but that they can keep it in their pocket in case they want to buy another investment property, or if they want to, let's say, take advantage of an opportunity that comes up in their life.
Yeah, we have a lot of clients who are more sophisticated in growth phase businesses that may have a lot of cash, say maybe retained earnings in their company. And in that situation, they've structured all of their debts as interest only, meaning that you only pay the interest based on whatever the difference is between the loan amount and what's in the offset. So in many cases, they actually use all of that cash and put them into the offset to offset the debt completely, meaning they pay nothing. Or if they don't have that much money saved, they pay a considerable amount less whilst still having access to that cash at all times. So I think interest only is a more sophisticated strategy. In summation, if you're looking to get into a home loan or an investment loan, make sure you reach out and we can have a conversation around what applies to your situation.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. Everyone is different. So it comes back to having a finance strategy in place, just making sure you nail that.
Yep, cool. This is a good one. So there's been a lot of news in the past couple of days around falling share markets in America, also the crypto market. For any of you guys that are punters, you got smashed. What impact is this going to have on me, and what should I do? Short answer, do nothing. Long answer, we essentially should be utilising these opportunities and continuing to contribute to the market, irrespective of what the performance is. What we need to understand is that the stock market volatility, or any market volatility, is just an offer at a point in time of what somebody is prepared to pay you for the value of your investments. So until such a time as you accept that offer and sell your portfolio, you haven't lost anything. And this was the downfall of a lot of, I guess, uneducated investors, particularly retirees, at the peak, or really at the bottom of the global financial crisis, where the markets had corrected between 40 and 60%, depending on the market. And a lot of these people panicked, and at the very bottom of the market transferred their entire portfolios to cash. And as a result, they were crystallizing their losses and accepting the offer that the market was making on that time. Now, if they would have waited, they would have had their portfolio recover the same plus some, substantially more. If they had a substantial weighting to the US market, they would have done extremely well. Even the Australian market, if through time, if they would have continued to contribute, they would have done quite well off the back of it as well. But the thing to keep in mind is that if they would have got to the bottom of the market, saw that as an opportunity that the market was actually on sale, and continued to contribute substantially throughout that period, they would have magnified the returns from that point to now substantially. They would be very, very well off as a result. But unfortunately, that investor psychology and that lack of education really scared them all into making the wrong decisions, to be completely honest. So what we do for all of our clients is we try and help educate them that the volatility is just part and parcel of investing. If we look at every period throughout history, over the long period of 10 to 15 years, the share market has always substantially outperformed cash. Even back in, say, the 80s and whatnot, when interest rates were very high, the share market has always returned substantially more. Further to that, we expect the share market will give us a negative year in every fall. But in saying that, preceding the fall, there's always a pretty sharp recovery. So what we do is we don't pick and choose the market. We don't try and speculate and time the market, because nobody gets it 100% right. But what we do is we use a strategy called dollar cost averaging, where we continue to contribute to the market each and every single month, irrespective of what it's doing. So let's say, for example, you're buying some shares that are worth $1 today. And let's say in a month's time, they go up to $1.20. And the month after, they go to 80 cents. And the month after, they go to 70 cents. Because you're continuing to contribute, your average dollar value is going to average out over time, which in fact is basically taking advantage of the volatility and averaging out your purchase price, which means that over time, when the market continues to perform, then you're going to get a substantial return on investment. No investment should be done on a knee-jerk reaction. And you need to be mindful that your investment portfolio is a vehicle that aims to get you to a destination. So ride the wave, let it be, continue to contribute, stick the course, everything will work itself out.
Yeah, this is a real bugbear for me, because everybody knows, right? Everybody knows any market that you invest in, whether it's shares, or property, or you're in business. Let's use shares as an example today because they're in the media. Everyone knows that there's volatility, all right? So over time, they go up, they go down, they're like this, okay? Everyone else also knows that over time, they do really well. So it really gets to me that when people invest money in the share market and it goes down for a couple of days and everyone loses their minds, well, of course, we all know this happens. This isn't a shock. This is not a shock. So if you don't have a strategy or a plan, then should you be investing in the first place? I don't know.
Look, I think you need to be educated first. Don't invest in anything you don't understand, and don't invest in anything unless you've got really an outcome in mind that you're working towards. Investing for the sake of investing is dangerous, and this is what tends to motivate people to go and short sell their portfolio when the market's corrected 20, 30, 40%. It's because they didn't have the really destination in mind to be able to objectively make decisions that were going to benefit them in the long run. They've just done the most detrimental thing that they possibly could have because of their lack of education and transparency around how they were going to achieve their outcome. So, yeah, if you want more info on that, just let us know.
Very good. Well, I have one more question for today. I want to buy my first home and I don't know where to start. What would you suggest? Should talk to me. You should talk to me. No, you should talk to a broker. So when you're first starting to look at buying your first home, you need to get a finance strategy in place, and you need to work out essentially how much you can afford to borrow, both on repayments for your own personal budget, but also how much the banks are willing to lend you. From there, you can couple that with your deposit, and that'll let you know what you can pay for a property. There's no point you want to buy your first home at $1.5 million if your scenario will only allow you to purchase a property at $700,000. So first things first, you need to get a pre-approval in place, and then you can start shopping. There's two variables, okay? There's your borrowing capacity. So that's how much the banks are willing to lend you based on your income versus your expenses. And then there's your equity position. So how much cash you've either saved up for this purchase, or some people use a family guarantee as well. You need to work those two out. You need to go to a bank or go to a broker, get an application in place, get it submitted to the bank, get yourself a pre-approval. So your broker or your banker can say to you, Jackson, you can afford to spend $800,000 on your first home, go shopping. And then you can start. I don't see any other first step, and you shouldn't be going anywhere without a pre-approval in place.
Yeah, no, I think it's a common misconception that people think that it might cost you something to get a pre-approval. It doesn't. It's really giving you that level of certainty to be able to know what your maximum spend is when it comes to going out shopping. And it also gives you about 3 to 6 months, depending on the lender, to be able to go through that process. So it doesn't mean once you get a pre-approval, you've got to go out the next week and find something, but it's really the next logical step once you've got your deposit or you've had a chat to your family about doing that guarantee. And I think that in a lot of cases, we can be our own worst enemy. We can procrastinate and say we're going to do it next year or never get around to doing it. I find that by taking that next logical step to get the pre-approval in place is really just backing yourself to start looking. Even if it ultimately doesn't eventuate, that's ultimately up to you. But at least you're pushing the pace forwards and hopefully working towards getting your foot on the property ladder.
That's it.
Cool. So that is the last question that we had for the Ask Aureus Anything live Q&A. Of course, if anyone's watching the replay, as you can see, we collate your questions throughout the week anyway. So feel free to reach out to us, flick us an email, comment on the video, post up in the group. Love to have your questions and your participation. Keep in mind, next week we're going to run it at 5:30, so we can hopefully cater to a lot more people. And we will catch you next Wednesday.
See you then.
Enjoy your week. Take care.